Like, we start.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners to order. We're going to start with prayer and Pledge of Allegiance. So if Jesse Meerman could get us started, that would be great.
Thank you for this opportunity to lead you in prayer. Lord, we come to you in Jesus' name, who has saved us from our sins. We come to you as humbly, so grateful to you that you have given us the opportunity to live in this land that has been consecrated by you as a place where your law is the foundation of our lifestyle. And also in this, where individual liberty is hallowed in our Constitution. It's so rare to have this opportunity, and even to live in this county, which is known as one of the more freedom-loving and places that people just love you. And it's such a privilege to live and to raise our family in this place. Thank you for so many of your blessings to us. We thank you for also for sparing Donald Trump's life a week or more ago. You were so generous, and we're also very grateful that he has shown his gratitude to you, and he's humbled himself and said that he belongs to you. Lord, we ask that you would raise him up and strengthen him as he follows after you. We're also, our hearts are going out to the people who are still suffering and struggling with the Lord, who are struggling with the aftermath of the attempt on his life. And we ask that those families would be comforted by your Holy Spirit. We ask, Lord, for unity for us as believers. It's such a privilege to live here, and you've given us forgiveness. You've offered it to us at great cost, and we're so grateful to be walking in that. And we ask that you would give us the ability to have grace for one another. You told us Psalm 67, you gave us a wonderful prayer. It says, God be gracious to us and bless us and cause his face to shine upon us, that your way may be known on the earth, your salvation among all the nations. Let the peoples praise you, O Lord. Let all the people praise you. Let the nations be glad and sing for joy, for you will judge the people with uprightness and guide the nations on the earth. Let the people praise you, O God. Let the nations praise you, and the earth has yielded its produce, God. Our God blesses us. God blesses us that all the ends of the earth may fear him. We thank you for your word, Lord, that is true. And we ask that in these times where it's so difficult to know what the truth is, that these people who are going to be making decisions tonight would be able to look to your word and know what the truth is and govern according to your word. We ask for discernment for them. We ask for the Holy Spirit to go out on each one of them and give them an ability to know what's right and the courage to do it. We ask that they would just be filled and they will act as if they were your children, because I believe that they are. We trust you, Lord, for what you're about to accomplish. And we're excited to see what you're going to do, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Right, if you could please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Ms. Cosby.
Here.
Klein-Jans.
Here.
Mr. Zylstra.
Here.
Mr. Bonema.
Here.
Mr. Moss.
Here.
Mrs. Wenzel.
Here.
Mrs. Curran.
Here.
Mrs. Rhodey.
Here.
Mr. Belknap.
Present.
Here. And Mrs. Medema.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have quorum.
All right, excellent. We have no correspondence, so up next is public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to come and address the board. You have 3 minutes, and if you could start by introducing yourself with your name and jurisdiction, that'd be great. Mr. Clerk, do we have a list?
We do. We have 8 registered public comments so far. And public comment number 1 is Carrie Hurtis, Zealand Township.
Oh, you have to register first?
There's an option to register, and anyone is able to speak after the registered public comments, yes.
Good evening. Carrie Hurtis from Zealand Township, live on Ridgecrest Drive in Zealand. I'm sharing a letter that has been written by Ottawa County deputies to the community of Ottawa County, Michigan. The deputies of the sheriff's office are asking for support from the community for the upcoming primary election on Tuesday, August 6, 2024. As deputies of Ottawa County Sheriff's Office, we want to make sure all voters are educated regarding the 2 candidates running for future sheriff. Candidate John Anderson is running as a true conservative Republican with conservative values. Researched and fact-checked by your deputies of the Ottawa County Sheriff's Office, John was asked by local citizens and deputies to run for sheriff. 8 out of 10 deputies prefer John Anderson after their own investigations and vetting process. This led to 3 sheriff department unions publicly endorsing John Anderson. Law enforcement experience of John, command level leadership in a large agency, over 4,000. Multiple specialized assignments over 32 years. Corrections, background investigations. Patrol Watch Commander as Lieutenant, Training Officer, Biometric Project Manager as Lieutenant, Academy Drill Instructor and Supervision as Sergeant, School Research Officer, Detective, Drug Recognition Expert, Bike Patrol, Station Commander, Chief of Police, Commander of Special Investigations and Homicide, Joint Terrorism, Homeland Security, Task Force Manager, Human Trafficking Task Force Commander, Department Funeral Commander, Watch Commander as Lieutenant. As he publicly stated, as a law enforcement professional with over 32 years of experience, I will lead the Ottawa County Sheriff's Department by providing the leadership and support the staff needs to keep Ottawa County safe and defend our citizens' constitutional rights with unwavering dedication and integrity. Anderson's endorsements are the Ottawa County Sheriff's Deputies Union, Ottawa County Sheriff's Corrections Union, and Ottawa County Sheriff's Sergeant Union. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 2 is Judy Hurtis, Zealand Township.
Judy Hurtis, Zealand Township. This is a continuation of the letter that my husband just read. This is referring to candidate Eric DeBoer, who is the current undersheriff, was appointed in March of 2024. He is running as a conservative Republican. However, he is not. He has openly demonstrated his liberal views and stance for several years at the sheriff's office. It is clear that in Eric's 20-plus years of experience, he has not gained the trust or respect to lead the deputies as sheriff. His law enforcement experience is over 20 years of service with the Ottawa County Sheriff's Office, community policing, detective unit, WeMet drug team, and he was a road patrol sergeant for just over 12 months. As you can see, their work experience does not compare. John's list of accomplishments are quite distinguished. The cornerstone of all law enforcement has always been honesty and integrity, upholding the Constitution and standing for the truth. Eric lost the trust and respect of the majority of the sheriff's office when he filed to run as a conservative Republican. He has been an outspoken liberal Democrat his entire career. This is clearly not the behavior of someone with honesty or integrity. We want to partner with our community knowing that they can trust us to be honest and accountable to them. Eric DeBoer has already demonstrated his deception to the community by running as a Republican candidate. John Anderson is the clear choice to lead the sheriff's office. He has already demonstrated good communication skills and leadership. John has taken the time to personally meet with several deputies to discuss the current toxic environment they work under with the current administration. Please stand behind us, deputies, and vote John Anderson on August 6th.
Thank you.
Public comment number 3 is Charity McMaster, Spring Lake.
Charity McMaster, Spring Lake. As I have done in the past, I would like to offer the board more insight into DEI efforts and how they are often misconstrued. I invite you to think about the ads that you see every day, commercials, online, billboards, magazines, even packaging, and notice how many of them feature only white or very light-skinned people, and maybe you've never even noticed before. Now imagine, would it be weird for you to see all of that advertising in your life with only Black or brown people, exclusively only Black people in ads and packaging? And I can see by some of your reactions, this is not okay with you. Is it strange, maybe wrong? In that example, did you immediately think that's not fair? Even by that reaction, you are advocating for diversity. There should be white people in advertisements. But are you now advocating for that same inclusion, for that same representation for other groups? Do you think also there should be Black people in advertisements? Yet only white is how most of the US has seen all of their ads for most of our history, and that's the problem. That view, mostly are all white, being so unremarkable, going so unnoticed, that it has become the norm. So much so that we like to say, I don't see color, because we haven't had to. How do we know it's the norm? Because any deviation, anyone asking for something else is labeled as divisive. Not seeing that ads that feature mostly or almost exclusively lighter skin and assuming that that's normal, this is a framework for racism. And you may say, I'm not a racist. And that could very well be true. But you grew up within this framework. You don't see color. And by not paying attention, by not even thinking to consider the ads that you see, you are propping up that system. Think of it this way. Do you consider your skin tone when you buy a Band-Aid? This is what DEI is getting at the heart of. White is considered so normal that for a long time, even the peach-colored crayon was named flesh tone. DEI efforts would ask that Band-Aid make 2 colors and advertise them both equally and make them both available, accessible as each other. Better yet, take the race out entirely and offer 3 shades of color, light, medium, and dark. In the winter, you buy the light package, and in summer, when you're tan, you buy the medium, just like women's foundation makeup. That is an example of DEI as it is supposed to be, not as it is manipulated to be. I invite you again over the next week, notice the ads in the packaging that you see. How many feature almost exclusively light skin? If you haven't even thought of it before, that doesn't make you racist, but it does mean that you are encouraging the problem. And if you start paying attention and you see more skin tones in ads, then hooray, you've noticed, and DEI for the win. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 4 is George Meyerhauser, Spring Lake.
Hello. MLive article, July 30th, 2024. Quote from Mark Northrup, who's running District 5 against the current chair, Joe Moss. Quoting Northrup from the article, "Our county party will be restored to integrity, honesty, and goodness. No more lies and destructive agendas. A wholesome vision will be reaffirmed instead of political polarization." End of quote. So, is Northrup talking about promoting abortion? Promoting drag queen story hour for children? Promoting Pride Month with Ottawa County Health Department employees manning a booth? Putting gender queer books in our public school libraries? Implementing pandemic/COVID lockdowns for our public schools? Mandating pandemic/COVID vaccines? Is this the wholesome and goodness agenda Mark Northrup was talking about in the MLive article? It's a shame Mark didn't show up for the endorsement convention on May 16th. 170 plus precinct delegates in attendance to give us his wholesome and goodness vision for Ottawa County. Abortion, drag queen with children stuffing $1 bills on their bodies, Pride Month. These things are not wholesome or good. They are destructive. They are evil. They are an attack on our children. So I started with a quote, I'll end with a quote. "The future of Ottawa County relies on the health and well-being of its children and young people. Children are our greatest treasure and most valuable population. We must always weigh the risk of harm to children in public policy decisions." Vice Chair Sylvia Rhodey. Vote Joe Moss, Sylvia Rhodey, Allison Miedema, Gretchen Cosby, Kendra Wenzel, Roger Belknap, and bring back Lucy Evil. These people will protect our children. They are on the record as having done so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 5 is Sheila Detloff, Holland Township.
Evening, Sheila Detloff, Holland Township. I'm here to talk about something that happened in the last board meeting that really concerned me. At that meeting on July 9th, Kendra Wenzel explained in quite a bit of detail to Justin Roebuck the egregious voter fraud that she has uncovered right in her own neighborhood. To give context to anyone who might have missed that exchange, I'm going to just quote from that meeting. Kendra said, and I quote, "I am volunteering with an organization that's working to clean up our QVF files. Over half of my neighbors have people in their homes that are voting that do not live in their homes. Is there anything being done in the clerk's office? I mean, it's literally thousands of names that we're going through. We're knocking doors, we're asking who lives there, and it seems to be kind of a mess. It's not accurate. So is there anything being done to clean that up?" Mr. Roebuck replied, "So you're saying over half of your neighbors have individuals registered and who are voting?" At that point, Kendra nodded. And the clerk said, "Yeah, I would absolutely encourage you to get me that information as quickly as possible, particularly because we are so close to an election. We would need to report that to law enforcement right away." I won't quote the rest, but Kendra doesn't respond about sending in her evidence and just asks again if there's anything Mr. Roebuck is doing about it. He patiently explains to her that they are not voter registration officials and they cannot change any voter information, and reiterates that having people listed in Kendra's neighbors' homes who are voting is a felony offense, and they would need to immediately report that to law enforcement. Again, that was on July 9th. Last Friday, 10 days later, I FOIA'd the evidence that the clerk requested that Kendra turn in so they can follow up with law enforcement. 10 days later, however, nothing had been turned into the clerk, nothing. Now, I know that there's some controversy over campaigning at this microphone, but if Sean Half is listening, I think this might be particularly important to him. His opponent in the primary is shirking her responsibility and duty as an elected official to report a crime that she has stated in the public record that she has evidence for. Multiple crimes, apparently, by more than half of the people in her neighborhood. Why is she withholding evidence? I know if I lived in District 6, I would want to know that.
Thank you.
Number 6 is Dan Zimmer, Port Sheldon Township.
Dan Zimmer, Port Sheldon Township, Chairman Moss and members of the board. At the July 9, 2024 Board of Commissioner meeting, Commissioner Kendra Wenzel made claims that half her neighbors have persons registered and voting at an address at which they do not live. Justin Roebuck asked her to forward that information to him, indicating a felony was being committed. July 10 at 11:32 a.m., I sent an email to Justin, Kendra, and elections@miottawa.org. I had questions and concerns, and to date, those questions and concerns have not been answered. We are all aware that making unsubstantiated claims have consequences. Rudy Giuliani, New York law license was suspended for making false claims of Georgia voter fraud. Dominion Voting Systems sued Fox News pursuant to baseless coverage and won a $787 million settlement. I know myself and others are waiting for an acknowledgement that Kendra is not, in fact, just spewing baseless voter fraud accusations. Acknowledgement that hard facts and evidence was forwarded to the Ottawa County Clerk Office and/or the Sheriff's Department that back up her statements. One of the 10 commandments reads, "Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor." If the statements made by Kendra in the town square lack merit, I would ask that the public record be corrected by a three-pronged process. First, a statement apology made publicly by Kendra. Second, a statement of fact to be co-written by Justin Roebuck and Communications Director Shannon Flagner and be mailed to every Ottawa County resident. Third, publish said statement in the Grand Haven Tribune, the Holland Sentinel, and Simply American. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 7 is Donna Mooney, Georgetown Township.
Good evening, Board. Donna Mooney, Georgetown. I guarantee when Donald Trump wins the election, Mr. Zimmer will be crying like a baby about election fraud. That said, Democrats have been in control of Michigan since 2018 and the federal government since 2021. When we look at grocery receipts, gas, energy, and health costs, the inflation rate is far greater than the 3% being reported by the government and media and ranges upwards of 20%. The American worker is being saddled with the costs of never-ending wars and invasive illegal immigration. Democrat policies are to blame for sending our manufacturing back overseas and creating a supply chain crisis. Democrat policies are responsible for paying other countries to drill our oil for us to buy back at a higher cost. Home prices have more than doubled, and with the increased interest rates, which the banks are making bank on, the American dream of homeownership is becoming out of reach for low-income and first-time home buyers. In most metropolitan and suburban areas of California, which has been a Democrat-run state for decades, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath split level will cost you upwards of $600,000. Soft on crime policies, which victimize victims by coddling criminals in what is known as restorative justice, policing the compliant, and prosecuting and persecuting political opponents using lawfare, are also Democrat policies. Lockdowns, forced injections of experimental medical treatments, attempted censorship of speech, such as what I experienced at the last Board of Commissioners meeting, are all Democrat policies that infringe on our civil liberties. If you like these policies and you're unaffected, then consider yourself blessed. In my recent work experience, many people are not as lucky as you. If you vote Republican, the Ottawa County Republican Party held an endorsement convention and vetted conservative candidates running for office. In Ottawa County, we have many people running as Republicans, but some in their policies, actions, and words align with the Democrat Party. They don't think you'll vote for them if they run as a Democrat, so for some, their very first act is to deceive you about who they are, just as Commissioner Bergman did. If you are a Republican, please check out the Ottawa County Republican website for the Republican candidates endorsed by the majority of 189 delegates who invested their time to vote for conservative candidates and to inform their constituents of those results. John Anderson is endorsed by all 3 Ottawa County deputy unions by over 80% over current Undersheriff Eric DeBoer. The majority of sheriff's deputies, through their unions, have asked you to make Mr. Anderson their new boss. This should speak volumes to the average voter. Deputies, we have your backs, and now is the time to stand up for yourselves in the community. A good sheriff needs a good prosecutor like Greg Todd. Rules and mandates are not laws. The governor and secretary of state do not make laws. The legislature does. We
Thank
should
you.
not be prosecuting people for broken rules, mandates, or
Thank you.
Number 8 is Ann Henriksen, Zealand Township.
Good evening. As we know, the condition of a country depends upon the character of its rulers. The state of an army depends upon the character of the officers who command it. And the more absolute the government is, the more is this necessarily the case. And I want to compliment you, commissioners, for your character. I was at the League of Women Voters in Zealand and listened to 2 challengers and Gretchen Cosby go back and forth answering the questions. The common word of the challengers were transparency, lack of transparency. And yet, Mrs. Cosby described one incident after the other in depth. One that impressed me was the Wayne State grant. The underbelly being that it was soliciting personal information about the participants, and that would cancel it. Bravo. I also met Mr. Bones, who gave the invocation at the Pride Festival. There I learned that in order to give an invocation, you had to go through your commissioner, and his commissioner was Mr. Zalstra. I also attended the Ottawa Conservative PAC meeting at a golf course where different challengers were coming to the microphone. One of those people was Mr. Bergman. And what did he guarantee those challengers of yours? That the Democrats would make sure they won. This is transparency. I would hope that everyone in Ottawa County comes out and votes their values of what you have stood for the past couple of years. We need you back. We need you in this place if we're going to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are all the registered public comments we have.
So an unregistered comment from Marcia Plafkin. I live in Hudsonville. I was born in Grand Rapids, raised in Ada, educated in New York, Jerusalem, and California. I've been pretty upset by most of what's transpired in this room tonight because I am certainly not a white nationalist Christian. I'm Jewish. I'm proudly Jewish. I'm the great-granddaughter of Rabbi Chaim Tzvi Halevi Rubinstein, who is one of the founders of the Hebrew Theological College, which stands today in Skokie, Illinois. Our family is proud of that. We have other rabbis in the family. I've also attended rabbinical school myself in Los Angeles and served as a rabbi for 3 years. I've experienced more hatred and anti-Semitism in Ottawa County in the last 5 years than I thought I had in my prior life, and I had already experienced quite a bit. I've experienced law enforcement corruption and bias. Most specifically, on July 1st, somebody stole a mezuzah from my doorpost. A mezuzah is a small ritual object that we are commanded in the book of Deuteronomy to place on our doorpost. I've had a fight with my neighbors because they don't want to hold up the Constitution nor our bylaws. Our common bylaws clearly state that no one may do anything in the common elements which is offensive to any owner. Many people have put up Christian crosses, which I find offensive, and they have no right to do it. They have a right to religious liberty within their private home, but the common domain, the common elements are just that, common. And when you buy it, and I think that's hard for Christians to hear. I think Christians are so privileged and so arrogant and so convinced that their way is the only way and that they have a right to trample on others. So law enforcement has trampled on me. And I sent today to everyone, and I'll ask you to raise your hands. I wrote a complaint today to the United States Department of Justice. I sent it to Justin. I'm asking you to forward it to the commission. The commission was blind copied. Raise your hand if you received it. One person's willing to be transparent. Thank you. Two people who are brave. Okay, I want to come back next month to talk in a detailed manner about the specifics of that. I don't want to get into it now. The overarching issue has to do with corruption among our police who fail to be even. They would not even investigate my claim of a stolen mezuzah. And yet when my neighbor called to say that I was stealing her Christian sign by taking it down from our common space and asking her to keep it, they were happy to call me a thief or try to, but they wouldn't even touch my allegations of theft regarding a mezuzah. And that's because Ottawa County Sheriff, the organization, is only concerned about Christians and white Christians. And if you think that's making America stronger, we don't live in the same country. And FYI, that's why I don't say the Pledge of Allegiance, which I grew up saying at Ada Elementary School. And now, as an adult, I don't believe the framers of our Constitution would say it.
Thank
That
you.
music means I'm done. I'll see you next month. I expect that DOJ complaint to be in the agenda and in the packet. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
My name is Laura Potgetter. I'm from Allendale Township, and I also have another letter handed down to me from the Ottawa County Sheriff's Office. My fellow Ottawa County citizens, here's another message from concerned deputies at the Ottawa County Sheriff's Office. Earlier this year, we were at a meet and greet at the GOP at the Ottawa County, and we had 3 candidates for the sheriff position at the time. John Anderson was asked during the meet and greet what he would do if the agency did not endorse him. He responded that regardless of his ambitions to be sheriff of this fantastic agency, he would step down and support the person endorsed by agency members. That is true leadership at its finest. He listens to the individuals who know best what the Ottawa County Sheriff Office needs. He even stated he will select an internal staff member chosen by the deputies to fulfill the position of undersheriff when he wins this August. When asked why, he stated because although he understands the duties of the sheriff's office, he wants an internal undersheriff who the deputies trust and someone internal who knows the culture of the agency and the communities of the county we serve. Eric DeBoer's endorsements from retired public figures or a commissioner who tried to silence the voice of a deputy at a public forum meeting mean nothing. The Good Old Boys Club appears to be trying to keep power instead of promoting the change we need. John Anderson's resume speaks for itself. People are spreading lies to try and tarnish his reputation. Sadly, this is what politics has become. Why not pick the best fit to manage the agency? Why not choose the man with the most experience managing what a sheriff is expected and required to do? Why not pick the man who majority of the deputies want? How is Eric DeBoer going to solve the morale issues when 8 out of 10 deputies don't want him leading the agency? Your deputies are frustrated that Eric has not pulled out of this campaign, standing behind the majority of his staff and having the administrative courage to fully endorse John Anderson for sheriff. Eric claims he is only continuing to run to save his job. Yet when deputies asked John Anderson about this, John openly says he plans on eliminating no members of our current staff. John has said Eric and others will remain their careers with the department if they choose to stay. August 6th is a day to choose your support for your police in Ottawa County. We, as deputies, care about all of you. That is why we serve this great county. We want what is best for this county and want to serve and protect you for the best of our ability. To give you our best, we need the best leadership, and with your votes, we can have that leadership from John Anderson. Please stand with our deputies and vote John Anderson in the primary this August 6th. Thank you from the 80% of the Ottawa County Sheriff's Office deputies fighting to elect John Anderson. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Hi, I'm Christy Meppelink. Let's talk about from Zeeland Township. Let's talk about county commissioner race in District 2 for Howland Township and a small part of Park Township. The primary election is a very important event to elect conservatives to our county board. On August 6th, District 2 voters will have 3 choices. Current Commissioner Chris Kleinjens, Lucy Ebel, the first Hispanic woman elected to this county board, and finally Jordan Jaritsma, who sued the Republican Party a few years ago in a lawsuit where it appeared the people bringing the lawsuit, including Jaritsma, were in cahoots with the organization being sued, namely the Ottawa County Republican Party. I'll start with Commissioner Kleinjens. As mentioned before, but worth repeating, he worked for MSU Extension. He recorded conversations with his bosses at MSU, and then he released the recordings. Please don't take my word for it. You can find the recordings online, for example, at restoreottawa.substack.com. Other publications have pulled the info down, but there's also a Substack article by Sarah Leach, who was editor of the Howland Sentinel until she was fired earlier this year. She wrote hundreds of hit pieces against conservative commissioners. After she was fired, a representative of the Howland Sentinel said this about Sarah Leach: "Our product is truth and facts." Sarah has her version of the truth, and then there's a narrative she is choosing to peddle to justify her actions. But back to Mr. Kleinjens. In a conversation with his bosses at MSU, Mr. Kleinjens had this to say about why he was the best candidate to run against Lucy Ebel in the recall election.
By a lot of factors, both genetic and historical, I sit better as a candidate out of that pool of 3, and out of the available talent pool, I'm the one. I mean, I'm older, I'm white, I'm a guy. My family's been in this area since 1848. I'm a veteran. I check off so many right-wing boxes.
So speaking of narratives, there's a claim repeated by the media and others that the conservative commissioners were somehow responsible for getting MSU Extension to place him on a leave of absence once he became commissioner. In reality, Michigan has a law called the Incompatible Offices Statute. According to MSU Extension reps, the university's legal counsel and administrative HR
determined that holding both positions, both the extension employee and the county commissioner simultaneously is incompatible. MSU Extension followed current Michigan law, namely the Incompatible Public Offices Act of 1978, when it placed Mr. Kleingens on leave. Don't believe the media narrative that they are trying to peddle. District 2 has a clear choice on August 6th. Citizens, please remember to vote. The Democrats invested over $20,000 to replace Lucy Ebel with Kleingens, which has been a mess, and Juritsma sued his own party. August 6th is the only opportunity we will have to get Lucy Ebel and other conservative candidates on the November ballot. Vote August 6th. November will be too late.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Kurt Beplike, I vote in Zeeland Township. Good evening. You are looking really good today. Ottawa County, when will you wake up and when will you see what's going on around you? The lies of those trying to get back in and of the media, whom most of you people in the county will say, yeah, they don't tell the truth anyways. So if you know that, wake up. There was a media blitz on Fox 17 where some candidates spoke to about 17 people. They really want us to believe there was a lot more. Here they gave us much of nothing other than hate and fear mongering. They want to be in power because they have experience, but do they really? Have you ridden on a street in Hudsonville lately? It seems Mayor Mark hasn't done a thing to repair those. Mayor Mark called Ottawa Impact a cult. He's not slinging any mud though. No, no, no. Ottawa County, do you really want a Freemason leading the way? Study up on masonry. Ask Mark a tough question just one time. Vote August 6th. Jordan Drietzma, he sued his own party. Ask him why he did that. And ask him why he thinks that you should vote for him. Vote on August 6th. Sarah Badgema, she admitted that she was a Democrat and now that she's running as a Republican. Ask her, who she is. She doesn't even seem to know who she is. Ask her why. Vote August 6th. They say we will be safe. Safe from what? We just had a sheriff who let the Ingham County Sheriff's Deputy Department come in and arrest one of our own. How was that protecting our Constitution here in our county? If somebody needs to be arrested in this county, it's our sheriff's job to do it, not Ingham County's. They are not welcome here. They say that we need to be elected so that Trump can get elected in the general election. Are you nuts? You have zero control of that. Trump is working against the establishment in Ottawa County. You're seeing people from the establishment want to get back in. As for the Trump train, everybody already knows it's got a full head of steam and they can't stop it. Why do you think they're acting the way they do? Ask yourself why. Vote August 6th. Listen to me. They are upset. The Ottawa County GOP listen to the delegates, as they should listen to we the people. These people have been outed for whom they are, and the facade is over. You can hide, they can't hide anymore, and they can't handle it. Our clerk is on a mailer for Ottawa Integrity. Is he? Good question. Ask him. Whom will he serve? How will we get a free and fair election? Ask him, Ottawa County. Ask them all. Hold them accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. There anyone else who would like to address the board?
Hello, Chair. Lynn Jansen from Georgetown. I get Georgetown and Jamestown mixed up all the time. The line's so weird. In March of this year, late March of this year, I came to this board with a civil rights issue that I understand is maybe somewhat out of the power of this board to correct. I had applied for a license to purchase a pistol and was told by our sheriff's department that I would have to go get the license to purchase notarized, or I could do it there for a fee of $10, which I view very much like a polling tax. Earlier this month, I repeated the process, trying to see, because after that first time, I got a very nice letter from Sheriff Kemker talking about the steps that they could take to improve that process. Said it wouldn't be a problem to get rid of the fee. Mr. Roebuck's department does that already at no cost. So this last time I went down to the clerk's office immediately notarized it for me. I turned it back in and was told again that I needed to wait 7 to 10 days in order to fulfill my constitutional rights. This is a civil right, and our sheriff's department needs to take civil rights seriously. I wrote to Under Sheriff DeBoer and asked him if the policy would be changed under his administration. He wrote back telling me of all the complications in clearing up this civil rights issue. Apparently, there isn't enough staff to worry about civil rights in the county. Obviously, this is a problem that our current sheriff's department does not care about, and it could be easily fixed with possibly one member. The state has made a bad environment for them, and I appreciate the position that the state has put them in. However, in Ottawa County, we need to take civil rights seriously, and we need to get this issue resolved. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to address the board? There is a second. Oh, welcome.
George Martell, Zealand Township. I just want to start out by complimenting the board on what a fine job most of you are doing. And I encourage you to keep up the good work and stand strong. And I want to express my disappointment and disgust with the people who are running against you. They act like a bunch of communists / Democrats. They are coming right out of the same playbook that the federal elections do. They take credit for whatever you guys have done. They find fault with everything that they used to do and then blame it on you. The projection is obvious. They are they're just wanting to get back in and do the same old stuff that they did when they were voted out. And they're doing it in a very deceitful way. The messages that they're putting out are completely false and made up. And it's just disgusting. So I encourage you guys to just keep on doing what you're doing. Again, stand strong. God bless you. I think he knows that you're doing the right thing, and if it is his will, he will bless you to keep on doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? There is a second opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting. Seeing no additional public comment, we'll move on. Next up is approval of the agenda. I have a motion to approve the agenda, please.
So move.
Second.
A motion and support. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carried. Next up, we have the consent resolutions. I have a motion to approve the consent resolutions, please.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the consent resolutions, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that motion carried. Up next, we have 8A, agenda and action requests. First one up is operating budget policy. Suggested motion is to approve the revised operating budget policy. Would someone like to make that motion?
So moved.
A motion and support from Commissioner Curran. Is there any discussion on this second reading of the operating budget policy? Commissioner Zylstra.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Appreciate that. I think we talked to, I don't know if you need to stand far away or close to it. Trying to decide which is the best distance. just about the scope of this. We've had contingency funds of,
Commissioner Zalstra, could you point it down a little bit?
Think that's the issue?
I think the issue is that there's a speaker above your head. At least that's my guess. A little bit higher,
Hear that?
a little bit higher. Let's try that.
let's try that.
Maybe pull it closer.
Oh, this is supposed to be better. Okay. We've never had contingency funds really exceeding $1 million. If we look at the 3%, it says in section 2, the amount of contingency will not exceed 3% of the general fund's actual expenditures. Depending on how you read that last sentence, that could be 3 million, or it could be up to 7 million. Still wasn't clear on how that second sentence came into play there, but even at 3+ million, it's far in excess of what we've had historically. We've had 500,000 to $1 million in contingency funds. I'd just like to make an amendment to put that 3% to 1.5%, which would let us have a contingency fund of 1.8 million, which is far in excess of what we've historically had as contingency fund.
Okay, there's a motion from Commissioner Zylstra to amend the operating budget policy to change the 3% to a 1.5%. Is there a second?
Or
A motion and support. Is there any additional discussion?
I just hope it's clear, the motivation for that. I understand the reason for the contingency fund, just making sure that, we don't have a contingency fund that is, far beyond historical we've had, so.
Is there any discussion? Commissioner
Just a-
Cosby?
No.
No? Oh,
Sorry, I was
okay.
just thinking, we have a board. of
Commissioner
Initiatives
Bonema?
fund too, so, I mean, and that has about $4 million in it, correct?
Probably.
The discretion of the board.
Commissioner Bonema?
Yeah, just a clarification question for Mr. maybe Wetmore on this one. Is it 3% of the overall budget or of a smaller budget? So is it of the 260 million or 3% of some other number?
I believe it's the larger budget, but I would direct that question towards.
Oh,
either
so well.
Karen.
I could fill you in on that. Commissioner Bonema. It says in the packet on page 158, the amount of the contingency will not exceed 3% of the general fund's actual expenditures for the most recently completed audit. So as Commissioner Zylstra is explaining, that's not the total budget. It's not the 200, 250 million. That's the about 100, 110 million.
So I guess do you want to follow, I guess just to follow that last sentence, does that last sentence then imply that anything that we allocate funds toward out of the general fund would be included? Because that could be, as the deputy says, include all of our funds to be the 250 million. So 3% of 250 million is all of a sudden a very big number, right?
That's a good question. Yes. Karen Karazinski had clarified this in great detail at the last reading of this, that it is specifically 3% of the general fund's actual expenditures, which is around 100 million. So it's not what you're thinking it may be. And so she specifically clarified the 3% is of approximately 100 million.
Is that the case? Because that's not what the deputy administrator just said.
Welcome, Karen.
Hello, good evening. That is, you read the policy exactly, Chairman, and so that is what the policy states, that is 3% of the amount of the contingency, 3% of the general fund expenditures as of the last audit.
Okay. Then I guess why are we adding that extra sentence if that is basically what the policy is? I guess I'm still kind of having that discussion from last time that the red line addition, and it doesn't seem to be doing anything, because what you've just said is that it's 3% of the general fund's actual expenditures, which I totally get. but then we're adding a sentence there that seems to be, as Deputy Administrator says, to open that up to the $260 million.
I think the added sentence is the and in my mind is more to indicate that the contingency could support a transfer to another fund. So the general fund frequently supports other operating funds through transfers. So the and is intended to indicate that the general fund contingency at that not to exceed 3% amount is not intended to support only general fund operations. The and is intended to indicate that the general fund contingency will support funds outside of the general fund through transfers.
Thank you.
That was the intent.
Okay. I appreciate that clarification. Not immediately clear to me, but if that's how we're going to interpret that sentence, that's fine. May I still think the 2023 number was 105 million, so we're still talking 3+ million as the not to exceed, right?
That is accurate.
Okay, so I guess, yeah, the 1.5 would still leave us 1.6, 1.7, which I think is far in excess of historical norms, so I think that would still be fine.
So you'd like to go to a vote on the amendment?
I'm done talking, so I appreciate that.
Would you like to withdraw your motion or
No,
continue
no,
that?
no.
Okay. All right. So the motion on the table here is to amend this policy so that it would not say 3%. It would actually say 1.5%. Does anybody else have any questions? Commissioner Kleinjans.
Being relatively new to all this, so the 1.5 is closer to what the historical norm has been, or I mean, it's in excess, but it's.
It is, well, yeah, so I mean, 2017, we had 500,000 in contingency fund. It's been as high as 1.055 million in 22, and in 23 was 805,000. So even the 1.5% would be almost doubling what historically we've had, right? So
Historically, we've had 3% as a limit in the
oh,
policy.
no, I understand, but as an actual number for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Commissioner Bergman.
I would ask Karen, is there a reason why we shouldn't be all right with 1.5%? Or do you think we need to have the 3%? Not putting you on the spot.
I was trying to come up with a reason, and
Historically, we haven't needed that.
historically, we have not set it that high. But like all things, I cannot foresee what might come up that might make you want to set it higher. I did not set it at that amount. I can't think of why it was set at that amount. Just trying to jog my memory. I don't know why it was set that high. I haven't done the research if it was ever for any reason above that amount.
Commissioner Rhodey.
Karen, just wondering, so if we if we keep this at 3%, that does not obligate the board to use a full 3% as a contingency fund every year as part of the budget. Is that correct?
That is correct. And also in the budget adjustments that come forward monthly, contingency adjustments are on those budget adjustments. So the board sees all the contingency transfers. So any contingency that is used or proposed to be used is approved by the board. So even if we set the contingency at, 2 million and funds were transferred or proposed to be transferred at an amount that was unacceptable to the board would see that at a monthly entry and would have the option to not approve any transfer that was proposed.
So every year when we go through and we formulate a budget, we have the ability to set the appropriate amount for the contingency for the next fiscal year, correct?
Based on the criteria in the budget that we are looking at and the situation that we're facing, yes.
Okay. If, for instance, there were ever an emergency that were to come up, where looking forward, we would say potentially in this next year, we might have the need for a larger contingency based on an emergency that we see that might be emerging. Would having a larger contingency policy enable us to better plan for that? Or are there any scenarios where you think that might be helpful?
I would say that because the board has the authority to set the contingency, because the board approves every contingency transfer, I would say that, having it at 3% there is no, there's very low risk in accidentally approving, spending, over authorizing something that you would be unaware of or that you would not have taken official action on.
Okay, I have one more follow-up question. Let's say, for instance, that we lowered the amount of the contingency that's allowed by policy, and then there were an emergency and we needed more funds. How would that affect the county? Would that result in any impact, for instance, on our audit? Would that lead to budgetary overages and have potential impacts on the county for those reasons?
So the contingency exists because we want to live within our current resources. So that is why we set the contingency based on the risk we see facing us in the year ahead. So as we talked about, last year's contingency was a little higher because we had open contracts. And so it's assessed at time of budget, and that amount is set because we want to live in current year resources. If we were out of contingency, we could still appropriate additional resources from fund balance. We could look for an area in the budget where maybe there was a surplus, maybe there was vacancy savings somewhere, and we could move that to where it was needed. We would look to resolve the situation. This just makes it a little easier to address this situation and identify how we're going to move through the year with our plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Curran.
Thank you. Karen, what would you recommend for this? I mean, do you think the 3% is appropriate? Do you think the 1.5% is appropriate? What do you feel is the correct number to have on this document?
Well, I left it at the 3%.
Okay. All right, there we go. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner, yes, go ahead.
Just looking in the packet where you're telling me, I think you said page 150?
158.
158, thank you.
Yeah. Number 2.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for answering so many questions. Does anyone else have any other questions? We're currently going to go to a vote on the amendment from Commissioner Zylstra to change the 3% to 1.5%. Could we Please go to the clerk for a roll call on that.
Yes, sir. Mr. Belknap,
No.
Mrs. Curran,
No.
Cosby, Mr. Bonema,
No.
Brody,
No.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
No.
Mrs. Medema,
No.
Mr. Kleinyans,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
No.
and Mr. Moss.
No.
And the motion fails.
Okay, well, we still have the main motion. Is there any other discussion on this policy? Percentage, contingency, the change in the sentence, the maximum amount, anything else? Any other amendments? These microphones are really good. Okay, nothing at all. Then let's go ahead and go to a roll call vote on changing the policy.
Ms. Cosby, Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
No.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Kleinyans,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
and Mr. Moss.
Yes.
And the motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is the fund balance policy. This is the second reading. The suggested motion is to approve the revised fund balance policy. Someone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Support.
A motion and support? Is there any discussion on this change? There's some minor wording changes in this one. Any discussion, any amendments? I look through it, looks like there's a little bit of cleanup, changing the word to the word for, things like that. An additional sentence that reads, special revenue funds that are supported by a general operating transfer of money from the general fund will only maintain a fund balance to the extent that the funds are one or more of the following types: restricted, non-spendable, or committed by separate resolution of the Board of Commissioners. Fairly straightforward. I guess I will just say thanks to admin and fiscal for assisting and helping cleaning up these policies. Can we go to the clerk for a vote on this?
Yes, sir. Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mr. Kleinyans,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
and Mr. Moss.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Great, thank you. Next up is committee reports, but we don't have any tonight. So moving past number 9, we're going to go to number 10. That's public comment. Again, this is the second opportunity. And if you'd like to address the board, if you could please come forward. You'll have 3 minutes to address the chair. And please remember to state your name and jurisdiction when you start. Welcome.
Live in Park Township. Oh, there we are. Did you know that our U.S. Constitution has proven to be effective for 235 years? Other countries' constitutions last an average of 17 years. What does that tell you? Sadly, however, there are people and organizations wanting to change, cheapen, ignore, or cancel our U.S. Constitution. It is based on our inalienable rights for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This includes productive living, not dependent living off the federal, state, or county governments. It is taking pride in making a living, maintaining a livelihood. Just as legal Polish immigrant Marlena, an U.S. citizen, did with her business in 2020, but was unconstitutionally shuttered, charged, and jailed. Many don't even know the U.S. Constitution. It makes a difference. As our Ottawa County Commissioners approved a resolution to declare our county a constitutional county in 2023, not one that would give in to every executive order declared by the Michigan governor. The election on August 6th has the 3 replacements next in line who are now in interim for sheriff, county prosecutor, and county treasurer. They were all previous county employees. The incumbents, all 3 resigned from their positions a few months after the constitutional county resolution was approved by the Ottawa County Commissioners. There are good reasons that these 3 did not want to stay in office. The days of going along to get along are over. We cannot be silent when we know what policies and self-serving agendas were in place in the 2021-2022 Ottawa County government. Please support our Ottawa Impact Commissioners on August 6th, as well as John Anderson for Sheriff, Greg Todd as Prosecutor, Ben Genzer as Treasurer, Dr. Sherry O'Donnell for U.S. Senate, and Brendan Muir for 4th District U.S. Congress to replace Mr. Go Along to Get Along Huizinga. We must stand and fight, fight, fight to protect our freedoms, families, and faith in God. There's only one Lord. His name is Jesus. His name is above every name on any ballot. Live for him. Jesus is Lord over Ottawa County. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board?
Good evening, Commissioners. Donna Mooney again. I'd also like to add Ben Genzer to my last speech. With regards to Mr. Kleinens, I'd also like to add, Mr. Chair, that he ran as a Democrat. Right-wing people didn't vote for him. They voted for Lucy Ebel, the first Latina on the board that Mr. Kleinens and white Democrats recalled. Gotta love their version of DEI. That said, I've heard some really hateful rhetoric coming from some people against the Ottawa Impact members of this board, yet I can't think of one freedom they've taken away from the people of this community. We've watched as Joe Biden labeled half this country as extremists and domestic terrorists for rejecting Democrat policies and labeling Donald Trump as a dictator and a Hitler. While Joe Biden ignores immigration law and even ignored a Supreme Court ruling issuing his student loan forgiveness as unconstitutional, amongst other things, he did it anyway. Nobody's above the law, right? We've had 24/7 MSM and social media demonizing half of this country, and we've even had some commenters here refer to the OI members of this board as Nazis and fascists, even by a commenter at the last BOC meeting. Yet the only policies I've seen that limit anyone's civil liberties are those coming from the Democrat Party. There are many things that I'm against, but I don't have the freedom to not pay for endless wars or the facilitation of illegal immigration. After years of demonizing conservatives, it was not a surprise that someone finally fired the first shot at President Trump and his supporters. I have never heard Trump or his supporters encourage violence against anyone, and in fact, conservatives were not burning, looting, or murdering in their own cities as retaliation. The hateful rhetoric against people you disagree with needs to stop. There is not one person in this room who said or done anything that warrants any type of violence against them just because we disagree. The OI commissioners also, just on a side note, took office in January 2023, and they are not responsible for money spent in 2022, as some purposely misleading billboards and flyers claim. While I don't know the circumstances behind the lady from California who spoke about her dispute with her neighbor, I take offense to her statements blaming Christians for her problems, and I consider her statements to be both discriminatory and inflammatory. I'm sure if someone else said the same thing but switched Christian for Jewish, she would probably feel the same way. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Hello again, Board. Christy Meplink from Zealand Township. Land of the free because of the brave. We just celebrated our nation's freedom. It's more than just military fighters. The war is happening right here in Ottawa County. How will freedom look here in the future if people don't get off the bench and get out to vote on August 6th in the primaries and support true conservative candidates? We have two completely different set of Republican candidates. One set has been endorsed by the GOP delegates. Contrary to a press conference called by the candidates that weren't endorsed by the delegates, everyone still gets a vote. Even the Democrats who are openly crossing party lines in order to vote for the weak Republicans get a vote. Who is injecting so much money into Ottawa County to get rid of conservative candidates? This is a chart. Hopefully you can see it a little bit. Oh, it's too small. It's a huge chart of all the different PACs that are fighting against our conservative candidates. The organizations are Anti-Ottawa Impact, Anti-Trump, Anti-Election Deniers, Pro-LGBTQ, Pro-Abortion, Anti-Second Amendment. The money flowing into Ottawa County from outside sources is absolutely mind-blowing. Why do we have an entire slate of candidates openly running with Democrats? They talk about party unity, all while being angry against people in their own party who are standing up for conservative values and for protecting children. There have been so many lies in our community, including false severance pay and legal fee amounts, all while forgetting the $5 million in ARPA employee bonus pay that was distributed by the last board. The details of many media myths versus truth can be located at ottawaimpact.com under resources. Also, the GOP endorsement guide is available at ottawagop.org. The Republican Party platform was built on conservative Christian values, just as our country and our county was built on the Bible and Christian values. The family has been degraded and torn apart by big government, and we wonder why mental health is so out of control. The family is meant to be the foundation of America. We must turn back to God as a nation and say no to evil. If that makes us extreme Christian nationalists, then so be it. Wake up, stand up, speak up, use your time, talent, and treasure. August 6th is primary election day. This election is what advances only one candidate from each party. It's the one thing that doesn't cost you a thing, but it will cost a lot if you sit it out. It's available to everyone, guaranteed to you by the American Constitution. It's your right to vote, make it count, don't surrender it, and then keep on standing behind the candidates that have worked so hard to fight for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Sheila Detloff, Holland Township. I just would like to clarify something. There seems to be an idea here in Ottawa County that all of Ottawa County is red, that it's very Republican. We do know that Holland City does tend to vote more blue these days. Oh. But I just want to clarify some things about District 2, which is where I live. In the November 2020 election, there were 13,136 ballots cast in District 2. Of those, 6,466 people voted for Biden and Harris, and 6,334 voted for Trump and Pence. That's 64-66 for Biden and Harris, and 63-34 for Trump and Pence, nearly 50-50. In the 2022 election, the November election, out of 9,975 ballots cast in District 2, 5,028 people voted for Whitmer and 4,730 voted for Dixon. That's 5,028 for Whitmer and 4,730 for Dixon. Again, nearly 50-50 with a slight tip toward Democratic. District 2 is solidly purple. I don't think there can be any argument about that. I realize that a lot of Ottawa County is very red, but we can't paint the whole county with a single brush. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Good evening again, Kurt Meplink. I vote in Zeeland Township. I just wanted to thank you guys for dissolving the DEI department. As we heard earlier today, people think that I'm against the DEI department and I'm a racist now. Actually, I'm a Christian. I believe Jesus died for everybody. I don't think it goes with race or with anything like that. If you want to see what's going on in the DEI department, most people here love CNN. They fired or they laid off 100 people in their entire DEI department. So if CNN did it, got to be right. Has to be. Can't be not be right. Ottawa County, ask yourself about DEI when they talk about it. Ask Donald Trump what what it looks like to have a Secret Service detail that's DEI. Ask Donald Trump what it's like to be at a rally where they decide they're going to play it nationally so you can watch him get shot. The same things that go on the national level go on in your local level. You're seeing it play out. Ottawa Integrity Pact. There's a list of them. There's money from California. I know one of the people on that pact boldly stated that he got money from California. Ask yourself why somebody from California is interested in Ottawa County. Mayor Mark, a good portion of Mayor Mark's funds are coming from outside of his district. Ask yourself, if you're in District 5, ask yourself why that is. Because I'm there and I want to know why that is. Why is somebody outside of District 5 interested in what's going on where I live? Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense at all. Call these people. Call your clerk. Ask him why. Ask anybody on here, anybody that's running. People are here to serve. I think some people are bold here because they have nobody running against them. Or they have some sort of an agenda. So, Ottawa County, please, please, I beg you, on August 6th, show up and vote. You do two things. They can't cheat when you show up and vote in person. It makes it harder for them, and they are going to cheat. Even Joe Biden said there's election corruption. And we know JoJo ain't wrong. So I hope you guys have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Do we have anyone online that would like to address the board?
We have 2 commenters online at this point, Mr. Chair.
Great.
First one is Adria Hill. Adria, if you could just state your name and jurisdiction, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Adria Hill, Holland Township. In a recent meeting, Chairman Moss came back from recess to read a resolution about the First Amendment as it relates to freedom of speech. All commissioners have sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States. The First Amendment does not just grant us free speech. It has an overarching aim to promote democratic self-governance and ensure that elected leaders are responsive to voters. But in order for the people to be self-governed and for elected officials to be responsive to the public needs to have the knowledge on what is happening in their government. If they are kept in the dark, whether or not I have the freedom to speak doesn't matter much because I don't know what to speak on. This board and the officials who report up to the board have done a terrible job with transparency. Instead of being open and honest about what decisions are being made and how they are being made, the public is forced to submit FOIA requests. You've heard me speak on this at least 3 times in the last year, and yet nothing has changed. Recently, one resident asked Interim Administrator Anderson for some information, and Anderson's initial response was something like, "No problem." But when the resident followed up on his request, Anderson told them to submit a FOIA request. That's when the waiting begins. Waiting the full allowed time for an initial response because of, quote, extraordinary business circumstances, unquote, that have been going on for the last 19 months. Then there are the fees for this public information. The estimates for some of these requests appear to be inflated in order to intimidate the individual from following through. One time I pushed back on the fees successfully, but my most recent pushback on exaggerated fees has gone left unanswered by corporate counsel. I will be sending each commissioner information about the lack of transparency coming from corporate counsel. I'm asking someone to follow up with them so that the public information is public by default and flows unobstructed to the public. This transparency will help you fulfill your commitment to the First Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next public comment is Joe Spalding. Mr. Spalding, if you could state your name and jurisdiction, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Joe Spalding and my jurisdiction is Holland Township. I'm glad somebody mentioned money coming in from California because my brother in Christ, Joe, you've got an entire ass candidate running for sheriff and a guy standing in front of you who is from California. And you'll remember not too long ago, I said, don't California arm Michigan in this way, in reference to the horrifying cover-up in Riverside County Sheriff's Department while John Anderson was working in ascending the ranks there under Stan Sniff of the crimes of Kevin Duffy. Kevin Duffy did the most horrific things possible to multiple kids. And the department did have a heads up on that. And instead of finding the extent of Kevin Duffy's crimes, they swept it under the rug. And I know that John Anderson was working at the department, and this complicates it even more and makes it even more horrendous because John himself is a victim of a serial police officer sex offender. And instead of getting this guy charges for sexual assault for what he did in Las Vegas, we have him just getting canned, which I guess, it's John's choice as the victim, but he should have been more in tune when that happened in 2006 to the fact of the serial nature and the extent of the gross personnel problem across Riverside Sheriff's Department while he was ascending the ranks. He didn't. Instead, when he lost the cloud cover of Stan Sniff, he fled and moved to West Michigan, and now he's trying to run here with a blank slate, even though everybody who ascended ranks in Riverside County likely knew about this. And there is one thing everyone knows about cops, and they are great folks, but at times when they gossip, it can be like high school girls sometimes. And they have fun with that, and usually it's harmless. Here, it's pretty clear that he knew what was up and was cool with that cover up. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online for public comment? No?
No, sir.
Is there anyone else in the room that would like to do public comment before we continue on? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to additional business. 11A. Do you have any additional information or any other report?
Administrator Anderson asked me to just update the board on a few brief things. The Human Resources Director position has been open for about 4 weeks now and will close on Friday. I know Administrator Anderson mentioned that several good applicants have applied, and anybody interested can apply at governmentjobs.com/careers/MI Ottawa. We're still working in administration on a revised septic inspection regulations. Jordan's putting the final touches on that, and then it will go to legal for review. The other issue that Administrator Anderson wanted me to bring up is that budgets are in, and that he and Karen have worked with the department heads to get those in. There should be final versions of the budgets along with CIP that will be collected soon, and so we can get those scheduled later this summer. We have a new ADA compliant podium that we're proud of, wheelchair accessible for public comment. The only remaining issue is we have some AV issues to connect it so that we have an active mic, but the one on the podium can work for now. So we're proud of our increased ADA compliance. And the Family Justice Center is now open, so we're excited about that. And that's been a long time coming, and certainly many individuals across the county, but also on our facilities team, have done a great job getting that up and running.
Thank you. Clerk Roebuck, would you have any other additional on the Family Justice Center? Just curious.
We had an exciting weekend, moved a whole lot of boxes. I will say the team has been great. I echo what Ben was saying about facilities. They have just been phenomenal in working with us. Just, the bugs that go along with moving into new space, key card issues, stuff like that. But yeah, we're excited about it. The team is excited to be there.
Is the clerk's office officially over there?
Yes, so we have 12 members of our team that are on the domestic side, so handling all the family court matters that are in that building. We have about 700 boxes of files that we moved in on Saturday, and going pretty smoothly. I think the first hearing is tomorrow in that building. So
wow, all right, it's great, momentous day. All right, Commissioner Zostra. Yeah. go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, so I was going to say thanks to staff and facilities for putting that out. It's a really great
Mhm.
idea. One question, I don't know if it's just me at this part of the dais, but there is no really illumination over the speaker stand. So sometimes speakers' faces are darkened, and I don't know if that with other commissioners have the same perspective. But if that is, and maybe speakers don't want to have that, light on them, but it would be, cool if we can kind of look at that a little bit. That light right there kind of goes in front, and then there's kind of a dark zone behind there.
As I think all board members know, we've had a few implementation challenges with the new system. I'll put that down.
Yeah, no, I appreciate all your work on
Yep.
the AV stuff. I mean, we're getting there and.
And we'll also look into the echo that was occurring as
Right,
well. to
great.
try and clear
Thanks,
it up.
Ben, appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I only have one very brief update. I'd just like to thank the board and everyone for respecting everyone's 3 minutes of public comment tonight. I'd like to remind the board and the people of Ottawa County that the First Amendment does not grant the people free speech. The First Amendment restricts the government from abridging the freedom of speech of the people. A good quote to remember is, "The First Amendment is for everyone." It's wonderful to live in a constitutional county like Ottawa County that upholds freedom for everyone. We're very blessed. With that, we'll call this meeting adjourned. Thanks.